Hey, it's Whoops here with a new Hearthstone video, this time covering the new patch notes and balancing changes that actually went out today. I know I'm a little bit late coming out with this video, but I still wanted to get my opinions out on these changes. And depending on how well testing actually goes, then there might actually be a video out tomorrow covering a deck that I want to test out. Though at the same time, it could just be on Monday, depending on how I feel when it comes to editing and making sure everything is out. So let's begin with the changes. The first one is to Wildheart Gov, whose Battlecry and Hero Power are now going to grant empty mana crystals instead of full. Really nice to see this change. This is something that's been long overdue when it comes to Wildheart Guff. I could have also seen them maybe reducing the maximum amount of mana that you can gain to 15 instead of 20, but I think this is probably the better change that they could have actually made when it comes to a card like this, as it doesn't actually kill the card, but it does reduce its playability by a little bit, though I don't think this will reduce its playability by enough for it to never actually ever see play again. Being able to get 20 max mana is just absolutely ridiculous, and given some of the other changes that we are seeing, it actually helps some of the combos that Druid already does and allows the class to actually keep doing those combos. Now, for Edwin, Edwin is being changed to a 4-cost minion. This is a shock to no one. Everyone expected this to be happening once they revealed the buff to Edwin, the last set of balancing changes. Honestly, before the last balancing changes, this card was already pretty playable. It just didn't have a deck, or people didn't theorycraft a deck for it. But now that the decks are getting more refined, a card like this is going to see a lot of play even after being changed to 4 mana, because you can still bounce it back to your hand and he'll retain whatever buffs from the cards that you actually draw and use on that given turn. And given the fact that Rogue does have access to a lot of really cheap cards, this is a really easy card to combo to be really, really high. The nice thing about this change, though, is the fact that you still can't do Mr. Smite plus Edwin in the same turn if you don't have some other type of mana discount, such as Scabs or something else that Rogue might have access to that I can't think of right now. And now for Mage's change, which is to Magister Dawngrasp Hero Power, who is the hero card for Mages. The hero power is going to be scaling up by 1 damage instead of 2, which puts it back to where it was before it actually got buffed up last time. I do think that buff was alright at the time, given the fact that Mage wasn't really meta relevant, but because Mage has all these tools nowadays, such as freezing out your opponent's board with Blizzard, which actually rotated back in after those buffs went through, this card was becoming a really painful card to actually play against, because you were just losing games where you thought you would actually win them. But because your opponent was doing 7+ damage to your face each individual turn, you had no way to actually win out a game, or even develop a board where you could even win a game. And given the deck that I've actually been testing out is a Mage deck, this change doesn't seem like it's going to kill the card, just put it back into a power level where it won't feel as frustrating to actually play against. Now, Night Cloak Sanctum is also getting a change to 2 durability instead of 3. Honestly, this is a change that I expected to see in the first round of balancing changes. It puts it more online with some of the other location cards that we actually have in standard. It was always frustrating to me to see a card like this being so good compared to some of the other locations you had, similar to the Imp location for Warlocks, both of which seem to be really overstated for their mana cost compared to some of the weaker ones at the time, such as the Demon Hunter location or even like the Paladin location. Because Skeleton Mage is so popular still, I do think this card will probably still see a lot of play, mostly due to the fact that you can still run this in any other type of Mage deck. Even if it is only 2 durability, it still generates you a minion and protects your face for a turn. Now, for a card that I'm actually kind of shocked that they're touching, but it actually really needed it given some of the other changes that we have seen, the questline for Hunter is going to have its first step be changed to deal damage with 3 spells instead of 2. When the month actually started and I was waiting for the balancing changes, I played a lot of Questline Hunter. And when I was playing that deck, across around 50 games that I played, I had a 73% win rate, which was absolutely insane for a deck that not a lot of people were talking about at the time. And honestly, given the fact that some of the worst matchups for this deck are actually getting changed to be worse. A change like this was absolutely needed, even if most people aren't looking at this deck right now. It's an incredibly unfun deck to play against because it can just burst for so much damage. And I'm shocked that they didn't change one of the other steps to also be 3 spells, but this is a good step in the right direction. I do think this is going to be a deck to watch out for still in the future, though. Alright, now time for the neutral cards. The first one being Keltis Sinstrider, whose cost is being increased to 8 instead of 6. This is meant to kill the SIRE brand Kale combo, where you could just do an absurd amount of damage in one turn. However, the classes that actually can abuse this combo the most aren't going to be affected by this change at all. Druid and Shaman both have easy access to doing this combo still. Druid has access because they can scale up to 20 mana, and Shaman has access because they have Bolner as a card, which is a 1 mana cheaper version of Bran. And there's so many ways to just duplicate your battle cries anyways in Shaman that I don't think this will change too much when it comes to the lists of a battle cry Shaman deck. Though that deck has fallen out of favor a little bit now that Snowfall Guardian has been nerfed. I do think this change is not the one that I would have actually made. I would have either increased the cost of the third minion play to 1 instead of 0, just making it a little bit harder to do the combo, and then maybe changing the mana cost of this card to 7, or change SIRE to infuse every 2 instead of 1, or even just rotate Bran out of rotation before he was meant to, because there's always going to be some type of combo that you can actually do with Bran, Kale, and SIRE, or any other big battle cries in the future that comes out while Bran is actually in rotation. You can actually still do the full combo in any class if you really want to. All you have to do is do one different thing with your deck list. And that one simple change is run Mailbox Dancer in your deck. Honestly, this is the easiest solution if you still want to do the full Kale combo in any class. And increasing the mana of Kale is going to be completely useless if people start wanting to run this card. Because SIRE is such a strong card, I don't see a world where people don't try to actually just include Mailbox Dancer to get an additional coin so you can still do the combo. Sure, it's going to add one additional card in your possible combo and gives your opponent access to a coin themselves to do the combo against you if they are playing a deck where they are playing Kale, SIRE, and Bran. But this is an easy solution, and I don't think this change will affect the combo in any way. Sure, it might be a little less consistent, but people will still figure out ways to do it, such as the Mailbox Dancer. Now for the last nerf, which is to Smothering Starfish, which is a card that I did not expect to see a change to. I get it. It is really frustrating to actually play against if you are playing a deck that actually buffs up your minions by a lot. This is one of those changes that is really frightening to actually think about, because there are a lot of decks right now that were either barely not meta relevant or are already one of the tier 1 decks in the current game, such as Aggro Druid, that like to AoE buff all of their minions up. Changing this to a 4 mana minion instead of 3 could mean the difference between life and death for a lot of these other slower decks that may face these aggro based decks. But I do think this card is probably going to still see a lot of play, mainly due to the fact that it is one of the best ways to deal with those decks, and I don't see a world where this gets cut because of that. Blizzard did say they think it's seen a little bit too much play because it was supposed to be a tech card, but it's still going to be a really good tech card, in my opinion. All right, for the first buff that we're seeing, it is to School Teacher, which is gaining additional HP. This HP is actually halfway to where it was before, where it was a 4/5 instead of a 4/3, which is kind of cool to see they're trying to revert the nerf, seeing where it is going to turn out. I do think this card was already really playable, so this will just increase its playability by a little bit, and maybe be included in some decks that really want to duplicate a 3 or less cost spell and have that chance to actually doing it, as this is just a better way to get a spell that you really need than something like Venomous Scorpid or the other things that will discover a spell, since it is a much smaller pool. And now finally, for the last one, Alliance Bannerman is going to be increased to 2 HP instead of 1 HP. Again, this card is already really playable in Paladin, so I don't think this is going to make it see any more play than it already does because most Paladin decks already run this card. It would have been really cool if Blizzard decided to actually buff up Paladin a little bit more because I do think Paladin right now has the lowest win rate across any of the classes in the game. I could be completely wrong with that. Though I am really curious of what the mini set will bring to Paladin in particular, just because of the fact that right now all Paladin decks feel like they play exactly the same. You either run pure Paladin or something very close to pure Paladin, and they usually run almost the exact same cards, just with the added benefit of using something like SIRE or not using SIRE, depending on if you're going for a pure variant or not one. And the questline is one of the only quest lines that has never been meta relevant, even though they have a bunch of new support in the Castle Nathria set, which I had hoped to actually push it to being a little bit more relevant. It would be really cool to see some type of Zoo Paladin deck maybe form around the quest line or even some of the other cards that Paladin has access to, but it is a real shame that we didn't see any more buffs in this balancing changes than these two. They're just really boring in my opinion, and I would have loved to see something for the weaker classes besides just an additional 1 HP on a minion that already sees a lot of play. All right, so let me know down below which cards that you're looking most forward to using, and if there were any cards that didn't actually get hit that you actually want to see changed. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.